Hey, it's Ed here. Welcome to another episode of EDTalks. And I wanted you to meet a friend of mine. He is a co-founder and partner of Aberdeen Advisors, David Wise. David, welcome to EDTalks.
Thank you, Ed. It's great to be here.
So I'm super excited about this because having leveraged advisors and consultants to the hilt over the course of my career, it's just kind of standard fare because it is totally valid. Sometimes you need sort of that external perspective, have someone come in and help you. Maybe there's a resource constraint or there's just, again, time. There's all sorts of different reasons. So I'm a big believer. So whenever I find someone or some organization that's a little bit different than others, I'm like all in. And I think who brought us together is a couple of CIOs that I really admire in healthcare. And I know that Angela Yoakum, when she was at Novant, was a big cheerleader of Aberdeen. And then, of course, at Summa, where I'm on the board, I've had exposure to what you all do there as well, and super, super helpful. And so I just want to share a little bit with my audience about what you all do and what your differentiators are, because it is completely different. So, David, one last little side rant for me, and then we'll jump right in and get to know you a little bit. But it just cracks me up, and I was part of that machine where we used advisors and consultants for everything, and it would be these multi-year engagements and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then they would walk away, right? And oftentimes,
Totally.
with the knowledge, they'd walk away. We never hear from them again. They never had to live with what they were suggesting and all those sort of things. And that's been the model for so many years, and it's like it's crazy to me, and we keep doing it. So it didn't matter what health system I was with, we kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And I think there's a better way, and I think what Aberdeen Advisors has been doing is definitely one of those ways. So we're going to jump into sort of that new consulting model differentiator. But before we get into all that, and after my way too long rant, um, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you come from tell us about yourself personally, and then we'll get into the professional side as well.
Yeah, no, and the rant wasn't too long. It was perfect. So thanks again for having me. So David Wise, from Kansas City, went to Kansas for undergrad, studied finance and Spanish, and then I started my career at Deloitte Consulting out of undergrad. I was doing a lot of like SAP transformation work. That's kind of where I first got exposed to IT consulting. I was doing it throughout Latin America and then also throughout US, primarily in the retail industry. And then life happened after business school. My wife and I were having children, and the work I actually did love the work I was doing at Deloitte. But it came a time when I just had to choose, right? You either choose being home and being a father to your children, or you choose the life of being a road warrior. And some people can make that work, and applause to them. I could not, right? So that was kind of the beginning of Aberdeen Advisors. And looking back, and I'll tell you a little bit more about our business. But it was a blessing in disguise. I think just having the confidence and the support from my wife to actually leave and start my own business. I couldn't have made a better decision, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing today.
Yeah, that's very cool, and we can see pictures of kids. You mentioned kids, so tell us about your
Yeah.
how many children do you have?
So, well, this one only shows my two oldest. So I have a 6-year-old son, Grayson, a 4-year-old daughter, Madison, and then we recently welcomed another daughter, Scarlett. So she's 5 months. So you could probably see the bags under my eyes, but actually, the last month she started sleeping more through the night. So I feel like a human being again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think we're gonna part of your story about, getting off the road, but still being highly effective and all that kind of stuff plays a big part in how you operate Aberdeen Advisors. And I already know some of the things because we've spent time together that we'll delve into. So I'm not going to give them away, but it's super, super impressive how you've created this culture with your other partners. So let's talk a little bit about that. What makes Aberdeen Advisors sort of different? What is this different approach that we've sort of been alluding to?
I mean, I think it starts with a virtual first model, right? You know, the type of work we do is certainly very challenging, but especially after COVID, I think a new way of working has been embraced, right? You know, I think clients are more receptive to people working virtually. And I think the work actually has become more effective. Like for consultants, you're not wasting every single Monday and Thursday night traveling to the client site, right? So they're actually getting, you know, a true 40 hours at least of billable work because you start at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. whenever you actually want to, right? So, you know, the virtual first model allows us to be more efficient, cost effective. I think it helps us keep talent longer. So, you know, a lot of the tough thing for the consulting firms is that as they train up these, you know, these high caliber team members, often they'll leave after 2 to 3 years to go to industry because, well, life happens, right? You start having a family. And for us, like we've actually only lost one team member. And that was because she got a great opportunity elsewhere. So, you know, we applauded her and, you know, are happy to see her having success. But we don't lose our team members. I think you know, most of our team is pretty seasoned. I'd say about 10 plus years on average of consulting, and a lot of that has been with us. So that's really key. You know, another differentiator, or I guess different way that we deploy ourselves. I like to think of us as transformation guides. So Ed, when you were using consultants back, you know, when you were wearing your CIO hat or your CDO hat, you know, typically, I'm sure you would use, you know, different consultancies to come in and give you a perspective, and then often they'd step away, right, and you'd be left to kind of own whatever they recommended you do, right? In Aberdeen, you know, I typically try to position our team for longer term contracts. You know, we're smaller, we don't have offices in every city, so it allows us to price our services more reasonably, which lends itself to longer term engagements. So a lot of our clients use us alongside some of the larger implementation partners to kind of de-risk that implementation and provide expertise alongside, you know, the big teams that those other consultancies may deploy, right? So I also think, you know, being around so long actually helps us provide more pragmatic and right-sized recommendations, which I think our clients also appreciate, right?
Yeah, that's, you know, that's, and again, I'm not here. The purpose of our visit, you know, you're not doing it. I kind of maybe doing it a little bit, but not on purpose. That's why I want to clarify something. You know, well, I appreciate, and I know you do, David, as well. You know, the big typical consulting firms, things like that, and there's definitely great ways to work with them. But it was, you know, that scenario where they'd come in, they'd, you know, come in, cost a lot of money, and then they would leave, and then whatever they recommended, because we paid so much money for it, we were gonna do, even if it wasn't right or required adjustments, because over the time of that engagement, maybe things changed in the environment, but you would be, you know, beholden to whatever they had left
Yeah.
you. Whereas you all are in it long term, like you were saying, like a Sherpa, embedded, and that way, you know, as things change, you continue to guide, and you better understand what's going on because you're there, you know, and you've almost become like part of that team, part of that, you know, embedded guide. And the other thing you mentioned, I don't want to lose sight of it because I know how long Aberdeen has been together, and if I'm getting this right, I think it's about 5 years.
That's right. That's accurate. Yep.
You've lost one person in 5 years. You know, you mentioned that one person had left, and that's remarkable. And the reason I wanted to bring it out is because culture is so important. And so if you're working with someone and they've got a really bad culture, you're going to have a bad outcome experience as the customer, right?
Totally. Yeah. And, you know, even speaking to kind of those longer term relationships, like Ed, we've yet to lose a client. And so like certainly we'll rotate different team members around just because you know, you can't work for someone for over a certain threshold. Otherwise you may be considered an employee. But like we have not lost a client since we started at Aberdeen. And I think that's a testament to us really creating a unique type of value that they're not getting from other advisors. And I agree with you. By no means do I want to say anything negative about some of the larger consultancies. I spent a lot of time and grew up at one myself, and have nothing but respect for the work and the expertise they bring. But I think we're different because we had the opportunity to start from the ground up virtually, and that was even catalyzed after COVID, where now everybody accepts it. So we don't have to, carry all of those costs, and I think it allows us to do things that I'm sure those other companies would actually do themselves if they could.
Yeah. A couple other things that I appreciate and be interested in your comments on is the lineage of some of your team, or maybe all of the team. You're coming from some of the best firms out there that we would typically, spend a lot of money with, because they add a lot of value. But that's the experience. You talk about 10 years experience. Like, your teams have that sort of experience, and multi-industry. I'm a huge advocate. I'm like, don't get someone who only knows healthcare, because it's going
Yeah.
to be a little bit insular, but work with firms and people that have broad experience. Can you speak a little bit about, some of that background that your consultants have, and you already mentioned about yourself and and also your other partners, and then the cross industry aspect.
Yeah, totally. So Aberdeen started really small. It was just me and a colleague of mine that I grew up with at Deloitte. And we were some of the first ones to, I guess, embark on having children. Fast forward 2 years later, and actually a lot of our friends and some of the people that we were sitting in the trenches were, having similar situations with their personal lives. And they saw a model, they saw the work that we were still able to do and do it virtually. And so they came and joined us, right? And from there, we really have just kind of grown through our networks. And that's both from a recruiting perspective. So, people from whether it's our Deloitte relationships or, and that's my dog. So part of working home from home is also that you have pets and children who barge into the office. But so from a recruiting perspective, it's really been organic. Ex-Deloitte colleagues or friends of ours from business school. A lot of us, had the opportunity to go back to graduate school, and so we've been able to recruit some of our friends who, maybe spent time at the Bains, BCGs, McKinseys of the world. Very high caliber team members. So
And across industries, right?
Yes, that's the other. And so I myself actually am relatively new to healthcare. I've been working in healthcare now 5 years. But I actually spent most of my time at Deloitte in retail and consumer products. And I did that, multinational organizations, and I spent a lot of time in the technology organizations within those retailers. So when you talk about bringing a cross-industry experience, I wholeheartedly believe that too. When you look at healthcare and some of the topics that we're discussing with CIOs on a daily basis, some of the topics are the same ones that we were discussing in retail when I was working at Deloitte. And that's no knock on healthcare or healthcare leaders. I just think there are so many complications and forces at play that it's much tougher to drive change in healthcare. And so I think having seen what good looks like really lends itself to being able to design solutions that work well for healthcare.
Yeah. Well, speaking of healthcare, David, I thought maybe we'd end with this. So I already mentioned a couple of clients that you work with, and that's, again, our connecting point. What are some of the things that you're able to speak about that you've been helping with some of your healthcare clients?
I'll speak, and this is actually a really unique engagement. And Ed, I know you know this particular client, Rocky McGregor. He in the past was actually overseeing community engagement for the healthcare provider that he supports or that he works for. And our job was to go into the community and find opportunities to build unique partnerships that could complement the health system overall. And so, not something that typically, I guess, a technology consultant would support, but I think it speaks to, I guess, the benefit of in the caliber of some of our team members, right? Like consultants, if there's one thing that they're good at, it's bringing frameworks and organization and ideas to any discussion, right? And so stepping in and supporting Rocky and engaging with some of the community leaders and actually understanding some of the pain points or some of the opportunities where they thought, a nonprofit regional provider could assist their communities, and actually being able to capture that data and turn it into something that would, impact that group. Um, I think that was probably my most meaningful and one of my more recent projects. So that was very cool.
And I know another one where you were able to help with strategic plans, because that's something I've been harping on
Yeah.
for quite a few years, that a lot of healthcare organizations, and especially IT, but even some of the actual organizations, they don't have a strategy. They might have one in their head, or they might have one that they wrote a while ago. And I know that you've been very helpful with at least one that I'm very familiar with, and it's really good work. So yeah, I think it's pretty fabulous, and I wish this model was further adopted in the industry, because I believe in it for the reasons that we talked about. David, as we sort of close, anything else that you want to share with us about Aberdeen Advisors?
Reach out. We are a smaller business, but I think you'll find that we are very responsive and we're in a growth stage now too. So, we would love the opportunity to work with any listener on a tough, complex problem.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah, that's cool. And I know one of your other partners, Philip, you both are just down to earth, real people, easy to work with, unpretentious. I really appreciate that about you all, and I appreciate again what you're doing in the industry. And thank you for being a guest.
yeah, no, I'm a big time listener. So thank you for having me in. This
Right.
podcast is awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. And yeah, next time we'll have more of your more of a cameo with your dog. So good.
Yes, Cubby. So he's got a cone on his head right now too. So.
Beautiful. All right, that wraps up Ed Talks. Thanks for listening.